Yeah, hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our program today. Do me a favor and send this link to as many people as possible. Yesterday, we have a very, very honorable guest in the house. I'm going to be bringing him in shortly, but I can't get my camera to work. That's why we have not started. So I'm going to crave your indulgence to just give me 5 minutes of your time, please, to get my own camera working, and we'll bring him into this. He's already in the studio, but I'm going to bring him up stage for you guys to interact with him. So please give us 5 minutes. I'm going to play some music in the background and get my camera working. Sorry about that. And welcome to today's program. Please do me a favor and share the link to as many people as possible. Thank you very much. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. We've had a couple of issues, but thank goodness we sorted them one after the other. And like I promised you today, we have a very, very August visitor in the house, an August visitor in October. Is my special guest, is someone I have so much respect for, and someone I think does not need any introduction, but just so that I fulfill all righteousness, I'm going to introduce him to you. My guest today is none other than Okey Ndibe. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Chidi.
You like to be as humble as possible, but we will not let you be
Oh
that
my God.
humble today. Yeah, in the flyer that I posted, let me post it again. When I posted this flyer and I said consulting an intelligent man, you had protested vehemently. Said, "No, why am I going to? Why should I use that word intelligent? Why
Mm,
you don't want to be ascribed as intelligent?" But
mhm.
truly, that's how I see you. I mean, having watched you through the years, and having I've not interacted with you so much, but I've met you
Yes.
in so many scenes. I've read about you more than I've interacted with you personally, and that reason why I really want to have this interview with you. But having said that, I want to tell you that in case you do not know, you are an intelligent man. So sometimes people should tell you who you really are. But thank you so
Mm,
much for accepting to come on this interview. Today, I'm going to be learning, like so many other people, about the the man Okey Ndibe. So let me start off from where I normally start by asking you, who is Okey Ndibe?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's a tough question for somebody who makes. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly well.
So it's a tough question for somebody who makes absolutely no pretensions to being intelligent, contrary um, to your false accusation of me. Um, so let me. I remember in 2014, after years of giving talks and readings around the world, I will go to Nigeria, and my mother will say to me, "So, what do you do at these events?" And I'll say to her, "Well, typically I go to a venue, a bookstore, or a university setting, and I give a little talk. I read from one of my books, and then people buy copies, and I sign the copies for them." And so finally in 2014, I was invited to do my first ever reading in my home state of Anambra State, and in Okey specifically. So the organizers, of course, my mother was going to attend. This was 4 years before my mother died. So the organizers, to my surprise, asked my mother to introduce me. And so somebody came up and read the usual, you know how Nigerians say that somebody bagged a degree. So they did that sort of thing. And then finally they said, well, the person who's known him the longest should introduce him. And they asked my mom to come out and introduce me. And my mom told the audience that she was aware that in Nigeria and elsewhere that there were Nigerians who held me in some esteem. And she said, "Well, I'm here to let you know that our son was a very difficult child who didn't like doing his homework, who liked to be just um, truant, um, who my late husband and I, she said, had to beat sense into our son. So, so, so my mother announced that it was thanks to her caning, my late father's caning, that I achieved a modicum of personality.
Yeah.
So finally, after she introduced me, I came out to speak, and I told the audience that I was going to go get the most nasty lawyer in the world, and that I wanted them to sue my mom for publicly admitting to caning me. But my mom did speak something that was quite true. I was a difficult child. I um, was just attracted to a life of dissipation. I didn't, at some point, I worried my parents sick because they thought I was going to amount to nothing. And I did try very hard to fail, but thanks to God, to my parents' prayers, I was sustained by their prayers, but by their effort. So yes, they did cane me. I can remember that there was no week that went by when I wasn't caned several times, and I'm happy that before my father passed, that I had the good sense to kneel down before my parents and to say thank you for all the caning and all the discipline that I got from you. Otherwise, I would have been lost. So, having said that, it's a way of saying that when I look at myself in the world, what strikes me above everything else is that I want every day to be worthy of my parents. I want, if my parents were still alive, for them to say every day that we're proud of this son of ours. So it's an emotional thing to say, but it's the is the truest sentiment that I can express about myself. That I was blessed with two amazing parents, and I've written about the parents that were called C and E. So my father was Christopher, my mom called him C, my mother was Elizabeth, and my father called her E. So when we were growing up, and they exemplified all the wonderful, noble, admirable values which five of us, their children, can only aspire imperfectly to meet. My parents were so close to each other that they used the same chewing stick throughout their lives, and they were always together. If my father was going to drink, whatever he was going to drink, he and my mother drank it together. They always ate together unless one of them was out of town. You could ask my mother or my father at any time, where is your spouse? And they could look at the watch and tell you where you were going to find their spouse. Because if my father was leaving the house, he would say to my mom, I'm going to visit Mr. A till 5 p.m., then I'll visit Mr. B till 7, and I'm going to come home by 7:15. So if my mom looked at her watch, she could say, if you go to Mr. A's house, my husband will be there. And so that's the kind of bequest, the kind of background, the kind of wonderful parents that God gave to a richly undeserving son like myself. So yes, I studied business management in Nigeria at Yaba College of Technology, and then at the Institute of Management and Technology in Enugu, where I got my HND in business management. I began my journalism career at Satellite newspaper in Enugu, and then I did my youth service at the Concord, where I was on the editorial board. Worked for African Concord magazine, then went to the Guardian, where I worked as an editor at African Guardian, a weekly magazine. And in 1988, Chinua Achebe invited me to America to be the founding editor of a magazine that he set up. That magazine ultimately folded up because we didn't have much of any advertising support. And I went to graduate school in America, did my master's in fine arts, specializing in fiction. So I became a novelist. And ultimately, I returned to do my PhD in African and African American and post colonial literature. So I've been a professor of Africana, what's called Africana literature and fiction at a variety of universities in America and at the University of Lagos as a Fulbright lecturer. And I'm currently the Vibrance Professor of Fiction at St. Lawrence University in Canton, New York. But this externalia for me, not as important as what I started with, which is that I see myself as the very fortunate, very blessed son of C and E Ndibe.
Wow. Isn't it funny? I ask, isn't it funny? I ask for who Okay is, and you tell me yourself through you tell me about yourself through a filter of your parents. You know, it's all about your parents, what your parents were, what they meant to you. That is quite revealing. The reason why I always do this is because I don't believe in people that just happen. You know what I mean? I always like to go back to who someone is, where they're coming from. I want to know their experiences so that it's because these days when you don't get originals, there are so many flash in the pans
Mm-hmm.
or so many packagings, as we say in Nigeria. There's so
Mm-hmm.
much packaging these days. So by the time you say you're this, I like to hear what you think about yourself, and then by the time we keep digging to your foundation, we'll be able to connect what you are with who you I mean what you really were with whom you claim to be. And so it's quite interesting, and it's such an honorable thing you've done here by not even dwelling so much on glorifying yourself and your achievements, but giving so much of that to your parents. That really shows that you had very good parenting. And I really appreciate that because I share in a lot of what you have said. But let us continue to dig further. What are your experiences growing up that you think are remarkable, or that you consider milestones in your life, if you can go as far back as possible? I know I don't want I don't want to remind you of the painful lashes of the cane, but because
Mm-hmm.
that's already
Yeah, yeah.
noted. But there must have been some other landmarks in your life
Mm-hmm.
that they refuse to go away. Whenever you want to go back, you remember them.
Yeah. Well, first of all, in a lot of ways, I consider myself a well grounded Nigerian because of the circumstances of my life. So I was born in Yola,
Mhm.
which is in current Adamawa State. My father was a postmaster at the post office in Jimeta, Yola. My mother was a school teacher at St. Teresa's Primary School in Yola. And so my first memories were of sitting in front of our uh, residence in Yola. It was called the clerk's quarters, where my father had his official residence. And I remember just I can still, as a child, recall that sense of this pastoral setting. There's this tree in front of the house where we lived that as a child, given how small I was, I thought that this tree reached out to the sky. Uh, in 2008, I had the opportunity to return to Yola for the first time since we um, had to go home because of the war. And I saw that this tree was so small that I could almost touch the top of it just standing. But I was born in Yola, and I remembered just the idyllic world of those days. The Hausa men in with gray beards and in flowing white gowns and so on. And there was one who was very fond of me, and he would carry me. And I remember reaching for his beard, and so he would move his head, so that as I thought I was going to grab the beard, he would move his head and so on. And so my earliest memories go back to Yola. And then, of course, on the eve of the Civil War, my father had to send our mother home with four of us. My youngest sibling was born during the Biafran War. The four of us went home, and my father had to stay back because he was a postal federal government employee. And the federal government had warned that if you were a federal employee and you abandoned your post, your job was lost. And so my father ultimately nearly lost his life because of that decision to stay back. So again, my memory just before the war started was of the day that my father returned to my hometown, and the kind of joy, the kind of excitement that people will bring their guns and shoot it up in the air in celebration of the return of this man who was presumed by all, including my mother, to have died. And what happened was indeed that one day my father was at the post office and the mob came to attack them. At the nick of time, the Lamida of Adamawa happened to be driving past, and he saw the mob, and the mob said, there are some Christians who are barricaded in the post office and we want to get to them. So the Lamida of Adamawa, a Muslim Fulani man, sent the mob away and took my father and the other postal clerks, workers, to his palace in Yola, where he gave them sanctuary for 2 or 3 weeks until things calmed down a bit. And he personally escorted them to the banks of the Benue River, where he got them into a ship that ultimately took them back to the southeast. So that's how my father made it home. I remember memories of the war, the Biafran War. As a child, I remember going to a center where refugees were given relief material. And I remember standing in line with my parents, and the man who was a few steps in front of us just slumped and passed, basically fell to the ground. And I recall clearly how, as the man was being moved, my parents were trying to shield me from seeing, but of course, I had seen. I remember the day when my siblings and I and other young children had gone into the woods. We were refugees in Okey, a town in Anambra State, where former Vice President Alex Ekweme was from. We'd gone to the woods to fetch firewood, and a Nigerian fighter jet came very close to the ground that the earth itself shook from the, just there was a tremor from just the engine, the power of the engine. And we saw the plane sort of tip and start dropping its metallic eggs, which were bombs. And I remember all of us thinking that the direction of the plane where the bombs came down and with the ear-piercing detonations of the bombs, that we were sure that the bombs fell in our house, and so that we were going to return and find that our parents were dead. But when we came home, it turned out that the bomb had landed at a market, which was, again, so it destroyed the market as well as the elementary school in the town where we went on occasion for lessons. So I consider myself, therefore, a creature of Nigeria. So I was born May 15, 1960. I was 3 or so months older than Nigeria, at Nigeria's independence. So I have a certain emotional relationship with Nigeria. Again, I was born in the north. My parents are of Igbo parentage. We ran home as a result of um, the war before it started. Um, I have very strong, resonant images of the war. And then I went to school partly in Lagos and partly in Enugu. Worked in Lagos, both for Abiola's newspaper, The Concord, and for The Guardian, owned by the Hebrews. And then in 1988, Chinua Achebe, the great Nigerian writer, invited me to come to America and set up an international magazine called African Commentary. And so that exposed me to a whole new world. And in America, I met a lovely blessing of a wife, Sherry Fafunwa Ndibe, so Yoruba by ethnicity, an African American because her mom is an American. Um, and so I've been very fortunate in my parents, in my pan Nigerian view. I remember, so in 2008, I went back to Yola and I met the now late Lamido Adamawa. So I met him, I think, a year and a half before he died. And I remember saying to him, "You are a Muslim, and yet you saved my father and the other postal workers." I said, "Why?" And the man said to me, "As a true Muslim, I felt it was my duty to ensure that innocent blood was not spilled on my watch." So it's important for me, particularly, and I think for other Nigerians, to remember that as we stereotype other Nigerians, there are people who say Yoruba are like this, or the Hausa are like that, or the Fulani are like this, or the Igbo are like that we should actually understand that good and evil exist within are distributed within every ethnic group. So there are Igbo people who committed horrors against other Igbo people, who are committing horrors against Igbo people today. There are Hausa people, Fulani people who are committing horrors against Hausa people today. But there are also good people in every ethnic group. And so I absolutely reject ethnic stereotyping of any sort. And I have known good people from every ethnicity and every quote unquote racial group. I actually don't like to think of human beings as races because we're the one human race. But so these are some of the ideas, that continue to shape who I am.
Wow. No one, you are a novelist and a writer. You can so graphically describe events that I could almost find myself right in the middle of your stories, and I'm
Mm,
sure this will form the background of a lot of the books that you've written, which we're going to look at down the road. But let me fast forward, and we're also going to talk about the Biafran Nigerian war somewhere along the line. But let me fast forward to something that is online. I mean, if one just types your name, okay, Ndibe, there are a lot of things that will pop up, right? So there is there is I want to share this. There's a page that says, let me see. Let me share the screen here and show you what I want to talk about.
sure.
It says, for 13 years,
Hmm.
DSS, Nigeria's DSS targeted novelist Okey Ndibe. Now he might push back.
Hmm.
Uh, this is, I know this is talking about your relationship with the DSS, So I'd like to talk about this love between you and the DSS, that for you had this courtship for 13 years.
Hmm.
What was this about, and what's their interest in you? What formed this love between the two of you?
Yeah. Well, in 1999, the Guardian, the managing director of the Guardian, Emeka Izeze, invited me to start writing a weekly column. The original idea was that I'll write weekly columns on my experiences in America. Okay. Sort of akin to those who are particularly literate will remember that there was this British journalist, Alistair Cook, uh, who for many, many years lived in America, and he wrote a column called A Letter from America. So every week he will write a column reflecting on a particular facet of American life. So that was a kind of idea that I would reflect week after week on some aspect of American life. So the first two columns I wrote looked at my life in America, and then it occurred to me that Nigeria had was undergoing a very important drama of transformation or of becoming, which is the drama of yet another democratic experiment.
Hmm.
So I told Emeki Zeze that I didn't find it particularly interesting to reflect on America, that I felt that my voice would be more poignant, more important, more relevant if I reflected on political events in Nigeria. So I became a commentator on political goings on in Nigeria. Um, and very soon, my columns became controversial because of uh, the unsparing language that I used to describe corruption and the miscarriage of justice and the abuse of democratic norms in the country, beginning with Obasanjo's administration and then going to Yar'Adua and ultimately Jonathan's and so on and Buhari's. And so on one occasion, I wrote a piece where I accused the National Assembly of being parasites in terms of what they took for themselves as compensation, which was unprecedented. That you have um, members of the National Assembly who are every 3 months received allowances that exceeded the annual salary of the American president.
Hmm.
Okay. So it's something that if Nigerians were aware of the ways in which their lives and their resources are gutted, um, I would expect that a lot of people will be absolutely enraged. So I wrote a bit against this theft of Nigeria's resources by members of the National Assembly. And on the very next session, one of the senators read my column into the records and said that I should be produced, I should be summoned to appear before them, along with the management of the Guardian, to come and be grilled on this criticism of the National Assembly. So it became news. And my position was just, I would answer your summons if you buy my flight ticket. I was willing to go and sit in front of members of the National Assembly and repeat what I had said and more. Anyway, but so over the years, I made a lot of political enemies from my columns. In 2008, I happened to go to Nigeria 3 times. I was invited to come again in December of 2008 to give a talk, to actually give a training to the staff of a new newspaper, 234 Next, which Dela Olojede published. So he asked me to come give a training on editorial writing to his staff. So I had bought my ticket. The idea was when I got to Nigeria that I would be refunded. But then I got two messages alerting me that the Yaradua government had put my name on a list of enemies of the state and that I would be arrested if I arrived. Um, so I discussed it with some friends, and some of them were worried for my safety and said I shouldn't go. Others, including Wole Soyinka, said to me, "You're not a criminal. You should come. And if they pick you up, we'll let the world know about it." So I was actually determined to go. But one of my friends who didn't want me to go called me 2 days before I was to leave and said, had I decided to suspend, call off my trip? I said, no, I was going. So he said, have you told your wife? I said, no, I didn't tell my wife because I didn't want her to be rattled. So he said to me, well, if you don't tell your wife, I'm going to call her and tell her. So I had to tell my wife. And, I mean, I knew that, which is what she told me. She said, I'll support whatever decision you make. But she felt that our children might be a bit traumatized if I was arrested and jailed for a long time. So on the eve of my trip, I canceled that visit. So in 2010, so I didn't go to Nigeria a lot that December of 2008, didn't go in 2009. Then in May of 2010, Yaradua died and Jonathan became the president and came to visit Washington, D.C. And two of his officials who are now late, one was Oronto Douglas, the other one was Ken Wiwa Jr., called me and told me that Jonathan was a big fan of my writing and wanted to meet me in Washington, D.C. So I told them that as a rule, I made it clear that I don't meet politicians because I write about them. And if you meet them, you create all kinds of ethical problems for yourself. I would never accept any gratification, any bribe from any politician. But if you are in their spaces and there are pictures showing you shaking hands and so on with them, they could always say that you came begging them for money. So I always make a point that that I will not be in a room with politicians, and if that has to happen, I have to be in a room with other people. I cannot be caught with them alone, so that at least there'll be witnesses that there was no exchange of any gratification. So I told them, I said I wasn't interested in meeting Jonathan in DC, coming to DC. But I said also that his government was part of an administration that put my name on a list of enemies of the state. So they told him what I had said, and they called me back and said, Jonathan just said he's given instructions that the list should be expunged. So the list of enemies of the state. So believing that to be true, in January of 2011, I arrived in Nigeria and I got arrested. So my name was still on the list of enemies of the state. So
can I ask you a question at this point? Do you think that was a deliberate act of deception on the part of the president,
no.
or you think it was?
So what happened actually was that apparently Jonathan had given instructions, but that's the nature of bureaucracy, right? Bureaucrats are told, put the name of this guy on a list of enemies of the state. They are quick to do it. Then a counter instruction came, remove the list or expunge the list, and nobody gets to do it. So when I was first arrested in January of 2011, it made international news. It was in newspapers in America, newspapers in Europe, all over Nigeria. People were writing columns in Nigeria condemning the government for arresting me. And they had taken both my Nigerian and American passports and told me to report to the SSS office or DSS office in Ikoyi. So I was arrested. I was stopped on a Monday. So after being detained at the airport for 3.5 hours, they released me, but took my passports and told me to report to the office on Monday. So I was arrested on a Saturday, right? I had to report on Monday. So by Monday, when I reported, the director of the DSS in Lagos told me that they were sorry for what happened. And by the way, when I was arrested, there were some critics of mine on social media who were saying, hey, it's possible Okey is part of a terrorist group. After all, he flew in on Turkish airline. Maybe he went to Turkey and was planning with some group to invade Nigeria. So when I met with the director, I actually went with a lawyer for the meeting on Monday. So when I introduced my lawyer, the director of the SSS said, please, sir, it's not a lawyer matter. I said, we're here to just return your passports and apologize to you. So he said, could my lawyer step out? So my lawyer stepped out. So I said to him, what is my crime? He said, oh, I had committed no crimes, that the government of Yaradua's government was responsible for putting my name on the list. And that, and then he assured me that Jonathan had now given instructions that my name should be removed. I said, but is there going to be a list with other people's names on it? The man said, I can't answer to that, but I know that your name will be removed. So I came out. There were some supporters who had come because I had, through social media, revealed that I was going to be at the SSS office on Kingsway Road. So a group of people, including some media, had come. I came out and I addressed them, told them I had received my passports back and that the government admitted that I had committed no crimes. And then a day later, the editor of The Sun newspaper called me and said that he had spoken to, I think his name was Bayan, who was the Director General of the DSS. So I had spoken to the director in Lagos. So the Director General, the overall head, called the editor of the Daily Sun, which carried my columns in those days. I wrote the column primarily for them, and the column was then syndicated and published in so many different online fora. So the editor of The Sun told me that the DSS Director General had called him and said that the only way they could remove my name, even though Jonathan had given instructions, was that I had to write a petition to him to have my name removed. And I said, nope. I said I did not write a petition to have my name put as an enemy of the state. So on grounds of principle, I'm not going to write a petition for you to remove my name. And so as a consequence of my refusal to write that petition, my name remains on their list. So every time I come into Nigeria, I'm leaving Nigeria, I'm detained a little bit. The most they've held me at the airport was overnight for 10 and a half hours.
Wow.
Sometimes it's for 30 minutes, it's for an hour, until somebody from Abuja calls them and says, let him go. So the drama continues. So in 2021, I got contacted by some lawyers who wanted to represent me to file a case. And I was going to do it. But then I realized that if I filed a case, it meant that I'll have to return to Nigeria every time there was a court hearing. And I didn't think that I had that time. So I've left things in a holding pattern. I returned to Nigeria. It's always drama. I don't know how long I'll be held at the airport. But it's one of those things that one bears. But on grounds of principle, I'm not going to write a petition to have my name removed from a list where I did not petition that the name should go.
Wow, it is interesting, and this is why I really wanted to have this interview with you because you're the kind of person, like you said, that you don't like making an issue of yourself and what even though sometimes people think you should, but this kind of interviews helps to you know it helps to really really understand certain things that were not clear from the past.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is a picture of when you were. Is this when you were released?
It must be. It must be. Is it by
Sahara.
Kano?
I found this on Sahara Reporters.
Yes. Yes.
So
Am I there in the picture? I don't
I I don't I
I
can't
don't see
even.
myself in the picture, but there was a gathering of people like this outside of by Kingsway Road in Lagos, actually.
Yeah,
I
I
can't.
found it.
This is the first time I'm seeing the picture, but
I think this was before you came out.
yeah.
There
But some
was.
people are wearing masks, so I think this is a more recent picture.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay, 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 okay. No, no, no. I found this when I was actually googling it, and I found this on Sahara Reporters.
Okay, so I think this must be a more recent picture. There was a group, and they did take pictures, but it wouldn't be this picture.
Okay, okay,
Mm,
okay, okay. Sorry about that, but
mm.
I found the news on Sahara Reporters saying Nigeria Secret Police releases US-based author,
Yes.
Okey Ndibe, and
Yes.
that's
Where that
an
picture
image
comes
somehow was attached to
from.
that.
Mhm.
So now, wow, somebody actually said something in the comment. It says, "I think this man and Shore is supposed to work together," and I'm thinking in my in my mind, if only, if only in. I guess because hearing you speak, hearing you hold onto some ideologies and make someone able to understand the kind of person you are. And I'm gonna talk more about that. But before I do so, I'd like to also show another aspect of you which I consider worthy of mention and worthy of letting people know. So, and if you're listening now, all you have to do is Google Okey Ndibe, and you would get to know so much about him. But let me go over to Amazon, and this would be a list of books that were published by you. There may be some more, but I see one, two, three, four, five of these books. Are there more? Are there more titles that were?
Well, excuse me. These are mostly books that I have either authored or I have edited.
Oh,
So
okay.
I have two novels and a memoir. And then I have this book that I wrote on Wole Soyinka, The Man Lives. And then there's a book, Writers Writing on Conflicts and Wars in Africa, which I came from a conference that I went to in Sweden, and the Nordic Africa Institute in Sweden, which organized a conference, asked me, along with the now late Zimbabwean writer Chenjerai Hove, to put some of the contributions together in a book. So
Mhm.
we edited it, and I wrote a foreword to it. And then there are a bunch of books where I have written, chapters and so on. So numerous books, but these are sort of the books that I'm either the single author of or the editor
So let's talk about
of Rain.
arrows of rain. It goes for $14, 44.
Mhm.
But let's talk about the
There's
book.
there's actually a Nigerian edition of that novel, so
Oh,
which was
oh,
just
there.
published. So that's my first novel. Arrows of Rain is my very first novel.
Oh,
It came out in 2000, so 2 years ago it marked its 20th anniversary. So my US publishers came out with a 20th anniversary edition,
oh.
and just April of this year, the novel was published in Nigeria for the first time. So before then, people had to order copies from America and
Oh.
or from Britain, where it was published originally in the Hanneman African Writers series. But all my books are now available in Nigerian editions. So Never Look an American in the Eye, which is my a memoir of my life in America, and I've had a very interesting life in America, including being arrested 13 days after I came to this country. Somebody robbed the bank, and the police arrested me and said that I fit the description of the person who robbed the
Wow.
bank. So,
Are
so
you kidding me? Are
yeah,
you? I'm
so
gonna. Okay, okay. You know what?
so
I'm
you
gonna.
have to read the book. Is so, so I've had a very interesting life in America, and it talks about just the transition from life in Nigeria to life in America. A lot of very funny stories. So, there's a woman in Britain who wrote about that she was reading the book on the tube going to work, and that she was just laughing and laughing, with laughter. And then finally, people said, "Hey, there's this crazy woman," but the book is very funny because it tells all these funny stories of my cultural. How do you translate your life from one culture to a different culture? There are all kinds of very funny experiences, including a young American woman 4 days after I arrived in this country who said to me, "Let's go to lunch." And so I thought that it's like in Nigeria where if somebody says, make we go eat, the person implies they're going to buy you the meal, right? But of course, in Nigeria, women will generally not buy anything for a guy, right? But I said, this is an American woman, they are liberated. So I didn't know that there's something called going Dutch in America, that when you go out to eat with friends, they want you to pay your own part and they will pay their part. So I went to eat without any kobo on me, any dime. And so that whole story, so there is a bunch of very funny experiences of my transition in America. Again, the title "Never Look an American in the Eye" comes from what an uncle of mine, my father's immediate younger brother, told me before I left Nigeria for America. And he said to me that every American carries a gun. So if you look them in the eye,
Whoa.
they will shoot you. And what happened was that my uncle had watched a bunch of westerns, cowboy movies where cowboys would get together in a bar and huddle to a corner, exchange a few words, and stare each other down and start shooting. So, because what preceded the shootout was the stare down, my uncle thought that in America, if you look somebody in the eye, the person will shoot you. So, it's a very funny book, culminating in the last chapter where I talk about how I crashed. So, the way I met the woman who became my wife was that I crashed her birthday party. So, I wasn't invited, but I went in there and I charmed her up, you know. So, so it tells a bunch of
She
funny
chimed you
stories.
up.
Yes, yes, yes. You know,
Okay, what about the other one? The
Foreign Gods Inc.
yeah, foreign
Well,
God.
Foreign Gods Inc. is my second novel. It's actually set partly in New York and partly in Nigeria. So the Foreign Gods Incorporated is a gallery, a shop that I invented that is in New York. And by the way, somebody read the novel and went to the Soho district of New York looking for the store, not knowing that it's a novel, so I made it up. Um, so it's a store that buys and sells the statues of, if you like, pagan deities that are pushed from different parts of the world, including from Africa. And it tells the story of an African immigrant who has gone to university in America, has a good degree in economics, expects to find a job in the corporate world, but he has a particularly heavy accent. So that prevents him from finding the kind of job he expects to find. And so he becomes a cab driver to pay his bills. And finally, he finds out about this gallery, this shop that buys and sells the statues of, gods and other sacred objects. And he decides to return to his hometown to steal the statue of what used to be the god of war for his people in pre-colonial times, and to sell it to this gallery, expecting to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and to start himself in business, so to stop being a cab driver. And by the way, again, life imitated art. Um, After this novel was published, some people actually went and stole the deity in some town, the statue of a deity in some town in Anambra State. So they must have heard about my book and thought that there is actually a gallery in New York that buys these things, and they must have gone and stolen it to sell it to the gallery and so on. So that's the title, Foreign Gods Incorporated, in a gallery that sells foreign gods, the statues of foreign gods. Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
then finally the one with Wale, about
Wole
Wale
Soyinka.
Soyinka. Yeah.
So some years ago, um, they a foundation in New York um, was interested in exploring Soyinka's life, beginning with the Nigerian Civil War, when Soyinka tried to stop the war, condemned the genocide of the Igbo people, but also tried to stop secession of Biafra. And then going forward to Soyinka's role in the Niger Delta, trying to broker peace in the Niger Delta. So they proposed that I so they provided funds, this foundation in New York, for me to interview Wole Soyinka. Initially, they wanted me to do something first with Chinua Achebe, but we couldn't get to it before Chinua Achebe died. So I went to Nigeria in May of 2018 and had an extensive conversation with Shoyinka in his home in Abeokuta. And then I went to the road with him. He was traveling to Makode, and so I flew out to Enugu with him, and we went on the road, and I continued the conversation with him. So instead of limiting the conversation to just his role in Biafra and in the Niger Delta, I made it about his life, as a writer, as an intellectual, as an activist. And so the book consists of a first section where I talk about my relationship with Shoyinka, and I've been very close to him since 1986 when he won the Nobel Prize. I interviewed him that year for a story in which I wrote for the Guardian magazine. And then over the years, I've had occasion to interact with him and to interview him. But I was first introduced to his work in secondary school as a student. So I go back to that relationship and how, in reading his prison memoir, The Man Died, showing that there's a moment in the memoir, early in the novel, early in the memoir, where Shoyinka writes that the man dies in all who keeps silent in the face of tyranny. And so that's something that has informed my practice, both as a journalist as well as a novelist. So I am ethically opposed to silence. If something is going wrong in the world, you owe an ethical duty to speak about and against it, and to bear credible, truthful witness to events in the world. So Shoyinka has been a very major part of my evolution, both as a writer as well as in my ethical outlook. So the first section of the book, therefore, on him sets out my relationship with him over the years, beginning from when I was in secondary school. The second section is a transcript of the long interview, which lasted about 6 hours, that I had with him.
Yeah. Wow. So I guess if we want to find more about these things, we should read the book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So many things, so much to talk, and you can understand why when I said I'm gonna have an interaction with an intelligent man, I was not lying. You even said you're an intellectual. You said as an intellectual, so
well,
I caught you right there.
Well, as an intellectual, what I say is somebody who is interested in ideas. In
Okay.
ideas, it doesn't mean that my ideas are particularly intelligent.
Whatever.
But I'm interested in ideas. So
okay,
yes.
okay. You're not intelligent. You're not intelligent. You're just an
I try to grapple with ideas.
You're a dumb intellectual.
Yeah. Well, I tell my students that the way I look at myself actually is as a student. So I'm a student of life. I'm a student of ideas, and so I see myself in the Socratic mode. And Socrates regards Socrates' idea is of the examination of life. Socrates has this saying that the unexamined life is not worth living. So I try to do that every day with ideas, right? So I look at, say, so many of our people accept this idea of tribalism, right? Tribal stereotyping. So that you find somebody who says, oh, Igbo people love money. And so that becomes, and they think that that's a statement that is true. And you find people who have gone to school, who are widely educated, and they say this as a pejorative, and they believe that that's true. They believe that any Igbo man would betray any principle once you show him or her some money. Or somebody will say, you can't trust Yoruba people. In fact, on one occasion, an Igbo friend of mine who didn't know I was married to a Yoruba woman called me and was telling me how you can't trust Yoruba people. So after a while, I said to him, wait a minute. I said, my life is in danger. I said, because I'm actually married to a Yoruba woman and I get into the same bed with her. And suddenly he said to
And
me,
you've done
"Well,
this for years.
he said to me, oh, some of them can be nice." I said, "As opposed to all of us Igbo people are nice, right?" So if we think about it, if we think for a second, we'll know that, as said earlier, there are good people and bad people in every ethnic group, and so I never reduce ethnicity to ethics. Okay, so there is no ethnic group that has an access to ethical behavior because they are Igbo, right? So somebody will say, Igbo people don't do this. I said, no, that's not true. Igbo people do, some Igbo people do what's good and some of them do what's bad. And of course, even people who do what's bad don't do it always, right? So people do what's bad sometimes and they do what's good other times. Same with Yoruba people, same with Hausa people, same with Efik, Ijo, Ibibio. And if we, those of us who should be enlightened, if we have a broad enough understanding, then we would not be making the kinds of choices we make in Nigeria or even in America, right? So you find that in Nigeria, you could produce a terrible political candidate, okay, to represent one party, and you produce a different, brilliant, positive politician. And the people from the ethnicity of this terrible candidate will say, oh, he's our man, you know, he's Igbo, he's Yoruba, he's Ijo, we're going to vote for him. And I think that it always worries me, and I think that is part of this malaise of really ignorance, which we encounter even in people with high degrees, right? But for me, to be educated means that you should be able to remove yourself from such primordial attachments to race or to religion or to ethnicity or to clannishness. And you ought to be able to say, objectively, I think this candidate, even though I'm Yoruba, this candidate who is Hausa is better than the Yoruba candidate. Or even though I'm Igbo, this candidate who is Yoruba is better than my Igbo candidate. And make your choice according to that rational criteria.
I'm going to move a little bit to politics,
Okay.
seeing that you just talked about some Nigerians and our habit of polarizing and generalizing. You are an Igbo man. I don't think you are in any way dismissive of that, or you
Mhm,
try to
mhm,
be humble about it. You have said you are someone who has been through the war,
mhm,
and you're not shy to talk about the civil war, and you are not shy to make commentaries about any part of Nigeria and issues generally. So it's safe for me to ask you these things. I looking at the political scene, and this is based on you've made a couple of statements. I've seen you make statements that seem to um, lean towards praising some candidates, but I've also seen you come out blazing, shooting from two barrels, and in absolute criticism of candidates. So that shows me you try to have a balanced approach to things. So, what is your analysis of what is going on right now in the political scene? And I'm going to close in to ask you to comment on Moyle Shore, whom I know you know very well, and also Peter B, whose campaign is trending in some way. I can't deny that.
mhm,
But I want us to talk about that sincerely. You know, uh, in your statement, one time you had tried to talk about how his campaign was gathering momentum, and at another time you had criticized his being in bed, or creating the impression of being in bed, with those that we are supposed as a people to be up against.
Mhm.
So I wanted you to comment on that.
Okay. Well, it's a broad question you've asked, so I'm going to answer as broadly as possible, and we can then narrow things down.
Yes.
So, when Peter Obi ran for governorship of Anambra State, um, he was rigged out. The PDP put in Dr. Ngige, Chris Ngige,
Mm-hmm.
as a governor. I didn't know who Peter Obi was. I knew who Ngige was. I had met Ngige from mutual friends.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, principles are central. And if you depend on principles, you don't miss your way.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I knew Ngige and didn't know Peter Obi, everybody that I trusted told me that Peter Obi clearly won the election, that Ngige was an imposter. So I began to write in my column that Ngige must quit the office. And I told Peter Obi that since you've won the mandate of the people, that it wasn't even an option for you to give it up. I said you must pursue every legal means of retrieving your mandate. Ngige, quote unquote, was doing well at this point. Excuse me. He was paying salaries which the previous governor, Mbadinuju, had accumulated a huge backlog of. My mom was a pensioner. My mom was being owed many months' pensions. My brother was a medical doctor. He was being owed 12 months by the state.
Mm-hmm.
So Ngige was paying those pensions, and he started on a massive building networks of roads. And people were saying, "Okay, to Peter Obi, yeah, Ngige was put in there illegally, but he's doing work, so just leave it alone." And I said, "No, even if Obi would be the worst governor in history, I believe in the idea, the principle of democracy. If the people choose a goat to govern them, the goat must govern them." And that's the only way that people then make better choices. So if they see this man we put in office has failed us, then the next time they'll choose somebody different. So I said to people, you can't make an argument that Ngige was doing well. Therefore, the people's choice should be invalidated. Obi should take over, even if Obi would not do well. So that's where I stood. So ultimately, after almost 3 years, about 3 years, Obi reclaimed his mandate from the court, and I was very happy. But then one of the things Obi did was that he visited Obasanjo and came out praising Obasanjo and then denigrating Ngige. And I wrote my first critical column on Obi, okay? And I said to him, Obasanjo was the one who put Ngige illegally, who used INEC to announce a false result. So you can't go and praise this greater criminal, Obasanjo, okay? And then begin to insult the lesser criminal, who both of them, Obasanjo and Ngige, deserve criticism. But Obi was now praising Obasanjo and denigrating Ngige. And one of the things I reminded Obi was that if Ngige had done what Obasanjo wanted him to do, which was to hand over the resources, the purse, the public resources of Anambra to the Oba brothers, that you will not ever have reclaimed your mandate. Because
Mm-hmm.
Obasanjo would instruct the same judiciary to uphold Ngige's election. So ultimately, it was because Ngige refused to serve that agenda that they agreed to have him removed. So I became critical of Obi and had occasion. So there was a time when doctors were on strike, and that strike I think lasted for more than a year. I thought that it was irresponsible for a governor to let doctors employed by the state to go on a strike for a year because, as I said at the time, if Obi's family lived in Nigeria, in Anambra State, and they depended on the hospitals, medical healthcare in Anambra State, Obi would not let a strike last that long if his family would be affected. So that was a great lapse of judgment on his part. And I had other occasions to be critical of his government. So then Obi comes out to run for governorship. And I see that young people have adopted him in a massive way. And He's become a kind of way, a kind of, he's galvanizing. He's actually doing nothing. It's like young people have given him their fealty, their loyalty, their energy. And they believe that this is the man who is going to transform Nigeria and change Nigeria. And I respect that very much because I've always said that young people, the majority of people in Nigeria are young, demographically. And I always found it a bit odd that it is the worst kinds of geriatrics, the oldest, most infirm, either physically or mentally infirm men who would run the country. And I said, what do these young people think? That a young person in their 30s should run for the presidency. And at any rate, they're the best, most informed Nigerians that we have. Okay? If you look at the way in which Nigeria has changed, that change has come from the effort, from the energy, from the passion of young people, the creativity in the country, whether it's the Nollywood industry or the music industry, or doing things the right way, digital economy. Okay, it's young people who are driving it. There are old people who are in government in Nigeria who can't even send a text message, who don't understand what time it is in the world. And yet they are running a country that should be part of the digital age. So I always have been an advocate for young people to seize the country because they've been betrayed by the elderly. So our cultural uh, deferral to old age. So there was a time when we thought that the older you are, the wiser you are. Nigerian elders have disproved that. They've been some of the most stupid and idiotic people on the face of the earth. The way they have taken the resources of a country and they have proved John Bunyan, the English writer, right when he wrote that the black man lives for his gut, for his stomach. And John Bunyan wrote that as long as black people continue to live for their stomachs, that the white man is going to continue to rule them in Africa and around the world. And when you look at our leaders in Nigeria and much of Africa, you see that that's what's happened. That you have leaders, when you become the president of a country, what an amazing opportunity you have to transform the lives of people. But people reduce themselves to, let me steal money and buy mansions in Europe and North America. Let me buy Rolls Royces and Bentleys. And then they die pitifully and they're buried 6 feet down like the pauper. You understand?
Mm.
But they have stolen all the resources that could have modernized their societies and they've sent them abroad. So I've always felt that young people are going to be the ones saving themselves. That as long as they put themselves in the hands of these geriatrics who've been ruining their country, Nigeria will continue to be ruined. So on the one hand, I like the fact that young people have taken a hand, which started with the NSAS movement. And so it's continuing now where they say Peter Obi is their candidate. Now, I've always said that Peter Obi is a very imperfect candidate. And I've also said that Peter Obi tends to overpromise, and people attacked me for that. I insist on that statement. Now, what I tell people, when I tell young people, is if you work for Peter Obi and you lend him your energy and he wins, you must, as it were, insist on being in the room of power so that you are not going to be sold down the river. So before you know it, is now Obasanjo and Babangida and so on deciding who becomes minister. That it should be young people who become ministers in the government. It should be the same young people who work to achieve his presidency, who determine what the agenda of the country will be, who ensure that the promises he made, that he's compelled to keep those promises. So I was taken aback given the momentum that Peter Obi has, which momentum has been given to him by young people, that he will go and start bothering with visiting Obasanjo and Babangida and so on. These are the enemies of the country. These are the people who put the country in the shape it's in currently. So if you are running as a candidate who is going to transform Nigeria, you should run against these idiots, not run in a way saying to people, they have blessed me, they have anointed me. So I still insist on that. So on the one hand, I'm impressed that he's running the most vibrant campaign in the country. He's a candidate who comes out, or let me say, he's running the most vibrant, prominent campaign in the country, right? When you talk to a Tinubu or an Atiku, the Tinubu has made his sort of refrain, Emilokon, it's my turn, to as if Nigeria is a pie, that you are dividing and you are sharing, and somebody is my turn to pick. And an Atiku is a kind of candidate who will hag back. I mean, the last time he was running for presidency, he said he would enrich his friends, and they thought that this was a good statement to make. I'm going to enrich my friends. No, we shouldn't be in that enriching my friends phase of politics. So Obi talks about the issues. Sometimes, by implication, he overpromises. When he talks about diversifying the economy and talking about textile and how much other countries like Thailand or Indonesia get from their textile industry and how it dwarfs what Nigeria gets from oil. A lot of young people listening to him think, oh, if we elect Obi, then we'll become like Thailand, we'll become like Indonesia. But it takes a whole lot to achieve this, right? And it's going to be extremely difficult. It's not going to be achieved in 4 years. It's not even going to be achieved in 8 years. You have a country that is broken in every possible way. Most of our oil that we live today is bunkered, so it's sold by individuals who are criminals. It's not, Nigeria doesn't reap much of the oil revenue. Our infrastructure is broken. Nigeria is borrowing money to meet its recurrent expenditure. You can't get more dysfunctional and failed a state as this. So I'm optimistic about the prospect of an Obi, not because I believe that Obi is a magician, which some of his supporters believe. I think that Obi is a candidate who comes with profound weaknesses. But if the young people remain vigilant and if they secure the presidency for him and they insist, we're not going to go to sleep and let you do magic. We're going to be in the room with you and make sure you do the right thing. Perhaps he will then become an agent of change. See what I'm saying? Now, I've been asked about Showore, who is our mutual friend. Okay? And I have said guardedly that Showore does not have the temperament to be president. And I want to reaffirm that sentiment here. When Showore was running for president almost 4 years ago now, people will call me and say, oh, why are you not out in the open supporting Showore? I said, because I don't believe in the Showore presidency. We all have our calling. My calling is to be a teacher and a writer. I've told people, if you find me tomorrow seeking to be a minister in a government or to be a commissioner or to head a board of some government enterprise, know that Okey Ndibe has lost his way. My calling in life, I'm good when I teach literature. I'm good as a writer, okay? I stay within those domains. Showore was an excellent publisher when he started Sahara Reporters, and that's how I got to know him, and I became invested, not financially, but emotionally invested, intellectually invested in Sahara Reporters. So I let Sahara Reporters carry my column. We worked at the editorial level with Sahara Reporters. Sahara Reporters is not what it did not meet its promise. So after a while, Sahara Reporters has lost its way, so that its rating in Nigeria has diminished substantially. You understand? So what I say to people is, if they ask me, why are you not supporting Shore to be president? I say Shore should return to Sahara Reporters and build Sahara Reporters into the best possible website to meet the original mission of Sahara Reporters. That is Shore's calling. I don't see Shore as having the temperament to be the president. I'm not saying he's not a good person. I'm talking about temperament, because it takes more than being able to get up and shout at an event to be president of a leader of a country. It takes a lot more. I don't have the patience, right? When I see people who argue like fools, I have a way of telling them you're arguing like a fool, right? And that's not a temperament for somebody who is going to be a leader. Because often, when you also tell people that they're arguing like fools, sometimes there's a gap in your own understanding, and perhaps the person you think is arguing like a fool has a point which you're not seeing. Okay, so that's why I stay in the domain of ideas, in the domain of writing. So in those two domains, I have my students argue with me over my reading of a novel. And sometimes I argue with them in class, and I go back and I reflect. I say, whoa, my students are actually right. I go to the next class and I say to the students, thank you very much for arguing with me. I have learned. So the teacher, the professor, is the first learner in class. So when I'm operating in the domain of the classroom, I can grow. Showore is operating in the domain of politics and not any longer as an activist who is a critic of bad governance, but somebody who is saying, make me the leader. And everything I know about Showore does not encourage me that if for some reason there were a prospect to make Showore Nigeria's leader, that Nigeria is going to change much for the better. Showore could maybe shout at ministers in open, could give fiery speeches, but all the things that it takes to be a leader, all the discipline and the patience and so on, Showore doesn't have it. So I will say to Showore, our mutual friend, okay, return and put your energy to Sahara Reporters. You serve Nigeria best through Sahara Reporters when it's strengthened and when it's as vibrant and as vital as it once was in Nigerian politics. So I'm going to stop there.
All right, it's for people like me who try to stay as balanced. Even sometimes we can get very polarized. Even as in Shore's case, it becomes difficult to sit and listen to you say the things you've said. But it is what it is. But I also find it a little bit, you know, difficult to understand why you would consider the fact that P2B, like you said, is not perfect, why you would point out all his flaws and still think that he could make a good president. Because what I hear, and that's where I have a very great challenge with a lot of people who are supporting P2B. I don't support P2B because the same thing. I don't. For me, the same wisdom, and that's why I don't live a complicated life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't live a complicated life, you're able to do things that is very outstanding to people. People think you're one big magician. No, it's because I live with the most mundane, simplistic principles in life. I don't look at things from a very complicated perspective. And with that, I've done very great things. I don't let things bother me too much. I just come back to the basic principles and I follow it and I solve a problem. The same wisdom that makes me, when I'm crossing the road, I wait for the car to pass, then I cross.
Yes.
That's the same wisdom I apply when I'm trying to solve big problems. I don't know why I don't have to beg God to give me that. If I couldn't cross the road when I saw a car coming, if I couldn't put the food in my nose instead of my mouth, I know my brain is working at its fullest capacity. So with that, I also analyze things. And when I analyze Peter Obi's antecedents as regarding this campaign, I see a lot of excuses being made for him, and that's where it negates my way of thinking. I can't see that this is a possibility. Like now, you make excuses for. You already see that what the young people, because you're right, it's not Peter Obi that
Mm-hmm.
chose the young people. It's just that
The
the
young
young
people
people,
chose him.
yes, the young people were frustrated. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, it's not Peter Obi.
Mm-hmm.
It is an expression of
Their
anger,
frustration, their profound,
frustration.
yeah,
So
yes.
you know what? We can't put it on this and this and I know what happened. A lot of people may not be able to understand it. This may not be the time to begin to break things down. Why it became. I use the analogy of a very good music, but because it has stayed for long, and now there is a new song, people go after that new song, even in Afrobeat, and it becomes viral. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that the old song is not good, but just people just wanted to listen to something that
Yeah.
is new.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, had been there, gone through these, always in the eye of the news, always went to court. It came to a time when if you say Shore is in court, people don't even want, because now, like, which court is it, yesterday or today? But that was something that the state kept doing until it put him in a place they wanted him to be. So in Peter B's case with the young people, whereas on one hand, the young people say, we are done with this old system of doing things. We are done with these people who have run our country down. We are able to run our country, and not
Mm-hmm.
just that we're able to run our country, even like you have confirmed, we have shown it by the things that we have done, and so we know what we want, we know where we are going.
Mm-hmm.
We now find a P2B that says, yes, I'm with you, but I don't believe that we can trust you, so we still have to go to these old people and get validation from them. We
Mm-hmm.
still have to go to them to get direction. We still have to appease them and rub their backs. And this thing of you saying, when if he makes it, the young people have to be. It's like saying, you know what, there is no brake in this car, but make sure that there are stones that even when we now realize that the brake is not going to hold, we put stones and things to hold the car back. No, 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 no. Like, for me, you could do that, you could stop the car, but that's more deadly than saying, no, 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 there's no brake in this car, I'm not going into this car. So,
Okay.
but so
Mm-hmm.
that's where I have a problem, because I would
Okay.
wonder, why wouldn't we use the same parameter to judge a show that you already said this is he's been able to do something to a certain level. I've not seen Shore compromise. I've not, so many of the talking points that people have brought up. Oh, he hasn't held this, he hasn't held that. They don't fly with me.
Okay.
So I would want a little expanding on that,
Okay.
because that's a major thing
Sure.
right there that we are looking at.
Okay. So let me break it down further, right?
Yeah.
I hope you understand
Mm,
that if the youth had come to me and said, we want a candidate to galvanize us, I
mm,
would have said to them, pick one of your number, pick one of your own to run the campaign, okay, to represent you, to fuel this energy, this frustration that you have. So I would not recommend Peter Obi. Let's be clear.
mm,
But you also said that Peter Obi did not choose the youth. The youth chose him, which is why I said the youth have chosen an imperfect vessel to embody and carry their dreams. So, and I'm saying if they are able to deliver the presidency to Peter Obi, I'll backtrack a little bit. It's like the whole Biafra question. So people will call me and say, "Oh, we believe that Biafra is the answer." And I said to them, "What's the question?" If the question is, "How do we achieve rapid economic transformation, structural transformation, democratic renewal?"
mm,
I say Biafra could be an answer. but it is not the only answer. So some people sort of simple-mindedly believe that, oh, if we achieve Biafra, if we have a republic called the Republic of Biafra, then all our problems will be solved. And I say to them, no. If you achieve Biafra, then you must start to act. You must start to fight to make sure that this new space called Biafra meets your goals, your dreams, your aspirations. If you just say, yeah, it's now mostly Igbo people who are running this space called Biafra, I say, remember that every state in the Southeast is run by an Igbo man. The 5 Southeastern states is run. Each state is run by an Igbo man. And I said, and there's corruption there. There is abuse of power there. So I said, the Igbo man doesn't have any purchase on ethics. So it is not true that if there's a space run by Igbo people, then that space becomes automatically good. So I say to people, if we realize that Biafra, the declaration of the Republic of Biafra, is not going to come with transformation of the kind that we want, that we must fight for what we want, then we can also fight in alliance with other Nigerians for what we want within the context of Nigeria. So I'm not saying that I want the Nigerian state to stay. I'm open to the dismemberment of Nigeria, but I just want people who call for balkanization, for the division of Nigeria, to know that prosperity and development and true democracy do not necessarily come because people who speak the same language as you or who have the same culture are running the show, that you still have to fight to achieve what you want.
But just on that point, so you know what the problem is, what the fundamental problem is with that?
Yes.
It's not even the agitation for Biafra.
Yes.
It's as a it's a form of, it's a civil disobedience. It's someone saying, okay,
yes,
since you cannot reason with us, since whereas you are not able to do this, we are now standing at this extreme because this is what will give you.
I agree.
Give our attention. So
I agree.
Even in that, the fundamental problem is that you are not even allowing them to. You're not allowing the expression of their right to even ask for that. I mean,
no,
someone's right.
Are you talking about I'm not allowing, or the Nigerian state is not allowing?
No, not you. I'm saying the fundamental problem in the quest for Biafra is the Republic of Biafra is an end, is the very end. But before that is the refusal of these people to the right to because it's their right.
And you know what I say when I speak about Biafra, and I've given talks about Biafra, is the first statement I make is that I believe in the absolute sovereignty and autonomy of people to decide how to run their lives.
Exactly.
So if people in my village or just in my family decide that they want to be a nation of their own, I think that on grounds of principle, there should be a nation on their own.
It's not even something
that should be open to argument.
We can't even.
So that's where I start. So I say, those who agitate for Biafra, if you can establish that the majority of people in that area want Biafra, the Biafra should be declared.
And the only way to do that is when there is that voting through a referendum.
Precisely.
But
So I believe in that. But then what I say to the people who want Biafra, I never say to them Biafra is wrong. Okay? Nor do I say Biafra is right. I just say to them because I once gave a talk in Athens, Greece, right? And a group of, in fact, I was invited at a major festival, literary artistic festival, and they invited some of us who lived through the first Biafran war to share our memories of the war. And so the Igbo community there heard about this. In fact, we tried to reach out to them to say, come. And the leader of the Nigerian community happened to be a Yoruba guy. So finally, we were able to reach out to him, and he called the Igbo leader and told him there's this thing happening. And the next day they came with, Biafran, pro-Biafran, the IPOB uniform and regalia and flags and so on. And they started attacking the Yoruba guy. They said he didn't want them to know, that he just told them yesterday. So we said to them, we just told him yesterday, we were looking for how to reach you. So you see that they already started accusing the guy of the thought that he knew we were coming like a month ago and he hid it from them. We said no. And we said to them, we want you to know that we are here to talk about our memories as Biafran children of the first Biafran War. But during our talk, they started waving the flag, so they got disruptive, and the organizers wanted to call the cops to remove them. So we said to them, listen, you must, when people do an event, you must respect the parameters they've set out. They didn't call this conference to discuss IPOB. They called this conference to discuss the first Biafra of 67 to 70 and to look at the memories of those of us who were children there and what our experience of the war was, right? So I remember one of the young men, and these are economic refugees from Nigeria. So he told me, "Oh, I'm here in Athens. I'm suffering to put food on the table and then to send money to my family." And he said, "But if we have Biafra, everybody will make money." And I said to him, "How are you going to make money if we have Biafra? You think if we have Biafra, there's not going to be the oppressive class anymore? Everybody will be equal?" And that's what some people think. If we have Biafra, we'll have good roads. There'll be electricity everywhere. I said, no, there'll still be corruption in Biafra. And there was, by the way, corruption. So there's a piece I've written called My Biafran Eyes, okay, which is online. People can Google it. My own father was a trade union activist during the Biafran War. And he wrote, along with Mokugo Koya and some other trade union activists, a petition criticizing Biafran officials who were stealing, hoarding for themselves, the little relief material that was donated by foreign governments. So you go to a market, a bag of rice has been donated, they wrote not for sale, but it was being sold in the market. It wasn't the ordinary people who stole it, it was top Biafran officials who stole that food, gave it to their families to go and sell. It was them who were hoarding too much of themselves while most Biafrans suffered. We suffered. Okay.
But sorry, okay,
yeah.
I'm not interjecting, but sorry to interject. I am actually, but
Yeah.
you see, when it comes to that would almost look like sometimes you have to stand and watch, and the key word there is sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that word sovereignty, you would look at a country, or you would look at a people, a family, an organization where you know that you could even do better than what they're doing. But because of their sovereignty,
yes,
because of their right to lead themselves, you can only just look and pray that they get it right.
yes.
But you cannot begin to question that, because if based on that, then even some marriages will not even come together. Even some company. But the thing is, it's their thing. They would have to figure out what would happen. So that's where I look at this Biafra quest.
Okay, but ultimately, when somebody comes to me and says, "This is the answer," Biafra is the answer. Just like young people come to me and say, "We think that P2B is the answer. If we put P2B there, then all our problems will dissolve." I say to them, no. If you put P2B as the president and you turn and go to sleep and you go and start eating pepper soup and say, "We're going to wake up tomorrow and Nigeria will be transformed," I said, in 4 years, Nigeria will be more or less the same as when P2B got in there. So I said, if P2B is going to change Nigeria, you are going to be right there in the room with him, and you said to him, "We used you, we chose you," and you said the right word.
But okay, why would you believe that the same young people that were not brought into the room prior to the deciding of how this government will be when it comes to the place, how would you believe that the same, like, these young people were not consulted when the meeting was going to be done with Obasanjo? And you know deep Nigerian politics. Someone was telling me that, oh, you get into these things with them now and you promise them, but when he gets into power, he will now disappoint. Okay. No, it doesn't happen like that in Nigeria. So how would these young people that you didn't even call into this meeting, they are having their own thing? You need them for the support, but you are going ahead and making this very serious.
It's a tactical. Chidi. It was a tactical, embarrassing lapse of judgment for P2B to make a big thing about, oh, I'm being received by Babangida, I'm being received by the Emir of Kano, I'm being received by this and that. It's a big tactical error. Now, I cannot presume to be in Obi's mind. I can't, okay? Which is why I said to the young people, you said something critical. You said, Obi did not choose the young people chose him. I believe in the wisdom of the young people. But I also said to them, wait a
But
minute.
it was not okay. Go ahead.
Let me make this point. I believe in their wisdom. I don't think that they are as innocent or ignorant as we think. They have chosen an imperfect vessel as the embodiment of their desires and of their aspirations for a better Nigeria. And I believe, I hope, and if it is not true, that's why I said to them, if you deliver the presidency for Peter Obi, you must insist on being in the room and being players, not on the corridors of power, but you should be in the room of power and setting the agenda of power.
How? But how?
Okay. The thing is that if they are the ones, if Obi knows, okay, that there is a certain energy that brought him to office, because the truth is that without the youth, this movement of the youth, right, Obi will be a forgettable character, candidate. You agree?
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask
Yes.
you a question. Okay?
Yes.
Because you see, this is very
But
critical.
I want to get to Showore, so I haven't got to him yet.
No. We're going to get. No, we're going to. I don't want Showore to be because he's my friend. Is your friend?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
That will be reduced. What we're discussing here is much bigger than Showore and Obi.
Absolutely, I agree.
See, if you recall during NSAS, there was this fear of you talking through to issues because you be labeled someone being against the NSAS movement. So everybody just sat down and watched things happen. Mm-hmm. It's based on what you say that you don't think the youths are ignorant. I don't think they're ignorant. Mm-hmm. I may be more than 50 now, but I am still in that realm because, look, I always tell people that the youths in Nigeria have suffered arrested development. So in the context of Nigeria, even someone like you're still trapped in that place. That's why we're still concerned. If not, by now, we should be going on vacations. Yes. We shouldn't be talking about Nigeria. Other people will be doing what you're doing. But the reason why we are doing what we're doing, we have not delivered. We have not handed over to. That's why we're still there. That's why we're still talking. We are engaged actively as youth, honestly speaking. In some other climes, that's not what we should be doing. So now, because of that, I'm interested. During the NSAS, the youth were active. When people like Showore and some other people came to say, you see what you guys are doing, this and the, by the way, he called me the time they were starting the Abuja thing. I know the genesis of how it started. But when the narrative was changed, I heard the news saying he was coming to hijack. You know how once they put a narrative, it just flies. And I was wondering, hijack something that he bought the banner, he organized to go to police and all of that. But that you can't do something about when it goes viral. But the interesting thing is, this same youth that we trusted, they knew what they were doing. They organized perfectly. Everything was going well. They adopted the position of there is no leader. And it seemed to be working. But that was a recipe for failure. Because when you don't have a leader, how can you not have a leader? When they were going to as the thing grew, as it grew and got more serious, some people started advising that this is going to take a sharp turn. At that time, the youths became so engulfed in this whole thing that they'd never seen before. They wielded power. There was entertainment, there was dancing, it was sorosoke. But they kept warning them, this thing is beyond entertainment. These guys you're dealing with are deadly, they are serious. The youth said that, no. All you had to do was wave the Nigerian flag. There was no military man. That's the kind of, just to tell you that it's not that I disrespect what was happening that time, but I want to show you what eventually happened.
Mm-hmm.
So this thought and this belief and this assurance that, look, this thing must continue. All we had to do was hold the Nigerian flag.
Mm-hmm.
Come the day the military invaded them at the toll gates,
Yes.
they were singing the national anthem. They were holding the Nigerian flag. This was what they believed was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was what the veterans, in quotes, was warning you could happen. This same military that they didn't believe opened fire on them and shut down that protest. Now, in saying that, you would, and this is where I've always been pained about NSAS, because I knew that had there been some form of leadership, had the government not succeeded in injecting their own ideology and scattering that movement, it would have succeeded, because there would have been some people that would say, that would be more strategic in saying, don't go this way, go that way. Sustain this thing here. You're actually breaking their back. Sustain. All they needed to do was to extend that. And the government officials were already traveling. They packed their bags. They had to sustain it just a little bit, and they'll get what they want. This same youth, we are at a crossroad right now, where someone like you can see clearly that, like I told you, choosing where to go, that's how youth is. They need to. My kids, they get so. You have older kids. Mine are very strong, very young. They get so bored so easily. Like you have to have something happening with them every second. There's no vacuum. So the likes of Shore, whom you would have seen this kind of massive following, and by the way, this is the same thing that we all went through. As the days unfold, more things would happen to really make us concretize some of the things we are feeling. The show where I was busy in court, jailed, restricted, was for them, it didn't provide, they want something happening right now. And even when Peter Obi found himself in PDP and insisting that, with his people following him, insisting that, you had to be in PDP because it has structure and all of that. The young people did not go and say, no, we want you to come out. It was anybody's game that time. That time, the show already didn't even have his party. AAC was in court, was hijacked by the government. Shora was in court here, and he was still being fought. They were still trying to attack him. So when they suddenly saw, somebody came out there's a new thing happening, and one or two people bought into it, social media, influencers, and all of that. When things are viral, they're just viral. So I'm concerned, and I'll end here. I'm concerned that instead of saying, I hope they get it, instead of saying, now that they have said this, that we should just fold our arms and now plan for, if it happens, this and this and this are what they must do. Shouldn't we be focusing on telling them point blank that, listen, this is how these things work. If someone tells me they are going to do this, I want to believe them. It's not my duty to begin to disbelieve a P2B that says Atiku is my mentor, a P2B that says my ideology is the same thing with Atiku, a P2B that says it's not, you're calling it tactical. I don't see that. He hasn't told me it's tactical. He has told me this is the way to go.
No. I never called it tactical. I said I actually am baffled by it. I'm very, very critical. I'm very critical, which is why, if you follow what goes on the internet, I have been attacked massively by, those who call themselves obedient, right? I have a clear-eyed view of Peter Obi and a clear-eyed view of his limitations. But what I'm saying also is that I have a clear-eyed view of Showere's limitations. And that in the end, what you said is that Obi did not choose the youth, they chose him. And I'm saying
No,
If you
I mean the youths that chose him, because
yes, okay,
it's, you can't generalize,
okay, that's
because he
true.
wasn't
But
there. See
okay,
what?
okay,
Let me clarify that. Obi wasn't in the scene, and when Obi appeared in the scene, of course he gathered some followership. So the people that follow him did not follow him because he went and preached to them, and they just followed him because, like I told you, it was a search of, oh, something like
precisely.
new song, new music.
And I agree with you. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with you. But whether we like it or not, in terms of, and it's not all the youth in the country, but in terms of the momentum for a candidate in Nigeria. So it's like a Tinubu or an Atiku. If they hold a rally, they would have to go and buy a crowd. It's like P2P doesn't even show up, and young people are arranging rallies for him in different parts of the country. And all I'm saying is, some young people then think, let's put Obi there and we'll have a new country. And I am saying, and I hope you're hearing it, I hope my listeners are hearing it, I'm saying that if Obi wins the presidency, that unless there's a way to compel him to serve the interests of the youth, if he's left to his own designs, it could be the Atikus and the Obasanjos and the Babangidas who shape and frame his administration, in which case it would be pure disaster. So that's what I'm saying. So there's a certain nuance, is what I'm saying. But I'm saying that if the youth lend their energy and Obi wins the presidency, that I hope they would then insist. And you ask, how do they do this? One of the resources that the youth will have is there's a resource of what happens in the next election. If Obi wins, Obi will want to come back. If he betrays the mandate of the youth, guess what? They could then lend their energy to another insurgent candidate. Maybe it will be a
After
Showore.
4 years.
Maybe it could be you.
But no, but after four
I don't,
years.
okay, but you know what? I don't even know that Nigeria, because Nigeria is in such bad shape that I'm not sure that Nigeria can survive. Whoever takes over, I don't know if you've heard me. Actually, I have been saying that Nigeria is so wrecked that instead of having elections next year, that what we should have is an emergency, what I call an emergency rescue transitional administration that will set a new constitution, set a template for the country to begin again. Because a country that is borrowing money to pay salaries, a company where law enforcement has failed, where territories are run by Boko Haram and unknown government and so on, is a country that doesn't exist.
Okay, you see what you just said here. You see what you just said here is what I would have thought that a lot of our energy would have been poured into.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm an architect. I own a construction company here, and all my life I'm not just like a contract. I've just been like I'm trying to use the right word. I'm a hands-on person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, forget about the architectural training and that I'm a contractor here. I'm somebody who believes in using my hands to create things. Even I do arts and sculpture and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't sleep when I know that I have built something on a faulty foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I come and I see that the foundation is faulty, and I go
Okay.
to bed because I'm like, let me just hope
Let's hope.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't fall. Do you
Let's
understand what I'm
pray.
saying?
Let's
So
pray
so
to
so
God.
that's something that scatters my help, even beyond my support for Moyele Shore, because Moyele Shore, and you said it very well. The part I didn't hear you talk about is his activism. Omoyele Shore, yes, his temperament is he doesn't have any room to accommodate certain things. So his being in this political dispensation is like his ultimate sacrifice as an activist, because you've done this from the fringes, and right now let's even confront them. And I am someone who saw how this transited to where he's now vying for presidency. That was never the plan. That was not it evolved. Even the party you're saying, I'm a hardcore founding member of that party. I know how we came to be. So I know what I'm telling you. But what I'm trying to tell you is that Nigeria is at a place where we're almost where we were before. Remember when we had Buhari thing and it was like any other thing but Jonathan.
Yeah.
We knew Buhari was not. That's why I say I don't want to be the.
And I kept warning though. I kept warning. Then I did an interview where I said, if we elect Buhari, we're going to find he's a dot. But I then was saying, reject the PDP and reject the APC.
Exactly.
And I was pilloried from both sides. And some people believe that Buhari raised a broom. And I said to them, a broom is not a vision. A broom is not manifesto. A broom is not an imagination of a different country. A broom is simply a broom. So and the change doesn't. I said you can actually change to a worse state than what you're in. So I warned about it prophetically, and I was abused. Somebody wrote a column in Sahara Reporters, which people can, the annoying distraction named Okey Ndibe, called Okey Ndibe. You can go and Google it, for yourself. And people say, but Buhari is coming to change the country, and Okey Ndibe is. I said no. I said Jonathan had failed the country. I said, but Buhari has not given us any vision of a country. And that's why I said, let us have a rescue government, a rescue arrangement, because Nigeria is a failed state. So that's my fundamental principled position, right? But a lot of people said to me, oh, get out of the way. The obedience are coming to change things. And I said to them, we might be massively disappointed, So
I would take that. I would take that. No, I would take that any day. And just for the.
But by the way, I have a podcast, the Offside Musings podcast, which comes out every week. And that has been.
What is it?
It's called the Offside Musings.
Offside,
yes, like playing offside football.
Yes, offside
Musings podcast. Musings, Muse,
yeah.
MUSINGS.
Podcast by Okey Ndibe.
Yeah,
I see. It's on
It's on a bunch of platforms.
It's on his Drive Media Inc. Yeah, I see it here.
Yes.
So let me just share it with people so people can get to, because it's not really the what makes the loudest. Okay, that is it. That's the one.
The Offside Music. Yes, so I do it with my co-host is Emeka Onyagwa.
Okay.
And so I have argued again and again that the country is so broken that what we should be talking about is an emergency rescue government. But when you say it, a lot of young people again come and say, oh, we're about to have a savior who will reshape the country. And I said, you will be surprised. And it's in that context that I also made my statement that Peter Obi tends to overpromise, because when he, reels out all these figures, a lot of young people say, oh, Obi becomes president and we're going to have 60,000 megawatts of power, and we're going to start making $50 billion from the textile industry, and we're going to have great streets and good roads and so on. I said to them, it's going to be near impossible given the situation of the country today.
Anyways, the good thing is, like elders, like in Igbo, they will say, how do they say it? Na nefenem okay,
yeah, that the particular offense or sin of the elderly is not to speak what you ought to speak, and then the particular problem or issue with the young is not to hear or not to listen, not to be attentive.
But to listen and not to heed.
Yes.
To the advice.
Yes.
So as it's funny when I consider myself as an elder. I'm an elder statesman now.
Isn't it something? Yeah.
So our duty will be to point people. I mean, we're all entitled to our own opinions. That's the beauty of living in where we understand democracy, freedom of
Mm-hmm.
speech, and understand life generally, and how we must accommodate each other's
Mm-hmm.
opinions and beliefs and stands. I'm someone who thinks Omoyele Sowore, with his ideology and having known him, is the kind of person who will come in and do the things that are very uncomfortable, like you even alluded to. We don't need right now. We don't need somebody who has that patience. Somebody who has the patience, somebody who is diplomatic. It's your kind of person. You don't even know it. You're the
Mm.
kind of person we need
No,
a leader. You keep saying, no, it's not
no,
you, it's
no, no,
not
no.
you. I'm telling you.
My temperament and my gifts lie in teaching and writing.
No, okay. So
If
how come you were able? How come? Let me ask you this, okay, Ndibe.
Mhm.
How come you have, even on this program, insisted that you would not write what is it, a protest letter, right? A petition
Yes.
to ask your name dropped
From
from the list of the enemies of the state.
yes,
This is you insisting
yes.
that you're standing on principles. You understand?
Precisely. That's what I'm saying. It's me as a writer. It doesn't mean that I'll be a good governor. It doesn't mean that
No,
I'll be a good local government chairman, right? So,
no.
so we need good governors. We need good local government chairmen. We need
After we've
good presidents.
sanitized the country,
Eh?
after let me
Okay,
tell you what it's like.
but you know that in revolutionary moments that there are some revolutionaries who are put in office
Yes.
and they become disasters themselves. So there's always the vision, but there's also always a temperament because you find some leaders who become, as Igbo would say, ezonya agwanam.
I know.
There's a particular plague where a leader begins to think, I have all the answers. So
Definitely.
when we're in the realm of intellectual debate, we can be fierce, right? But when
Mhm.
the lives of people are at stake, a leader who doesn't patiently listen and look at all the options before deciding could actually quickly take a decision which he believes is the right decision, but it creates massive disruptions and human rights disasters, right? So, what I'm saying is that my temperament doesn't conduce to listening to we have a cabinet meeting and this person will produce this policy option, the other person will produce that policy options, and let's look at the positives and the negatives of this one. And so I don't have that. I read novels and I get excited and I see what's going on in a novel and I like to teach it. I like to write novels and bring all these intricate relationships to bear, right? When it comes to politics, I'm not good at it
But
because
right now, but you just said, see, let me tell you
so
something.
I'm a
It's like
I'm,
you're prof, you're
yes,
prof,
yes,
prof, Okey Ndibe. But
yes,
you choose not to answer Professor Okey Ndibe.
yes, yes, precisely.
This is you, but it
Okay, but
doesn't.
how does that translate into being a leader?
Oh no, I'm
So
coming to.
I
No,
don't. Okay,
I'm trying.
yeah. So
Let me
I
explain to
never,
you.
when I
No,
introduce myself to
let
people,
me
I say my name
so
is
let me
Okay
explain to
Ndibe.
you.
Yes,
Let me
okay,
explain. So let me explain to you
okay,
what I mean.
okay.
You are, that's who you are, Professor
Yes,
Okey Ndibe. You're a professor in a university, you teach.
yes,
Now you don't want, it doesn't mean it's not there. That people are not
yes.
calling you that, it doesn't mean
I
that it's
agree.
not there.
I agree. And
I'm not
it's
really
actually
sure.
because it's there that I don't want to wear the
Yeah,
toga. So I
yeah,
just say my name is Okay Ndibe. Yes.
but the reason why you're called a professor, the reason why they invented that, it is what it is, and that's who you are. You just made a choice not to put that before you. For just that is your own preference. For someone like Omoyele Sowore, what and you could be talking about him based on your knowledge of him. I'm also talking about him based on my experience with him. I know some things that are especially at very very critical moments. I didn't know him for such a very long time, but I came to know him at very critical moments and moments where I had to take some far-reaching decisions even about this our country now. And I saw the way he handled it. That's what makes me believe that where we are right now, remember, listen to what I'm saying. Where we are right now, which you agree, the kind of leadership that we need in some other countries. if it was in those days when things have not become the way they are right now and they brought some sanity, you will be thinking of a coup in Nigeria.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what Nigeria is ready for. In the times of Thomas Sankara and those there, that's what Nigeria is looking for, a young man who would come and sanitize the system. When you sanitize the system, and then there's a new constitution, and people are disciplined, people are sacked, people are driven away, things are shut down. That after you have rescued the country, like you said, we need an emergency. We're like somebody who needs to be in the emergency department. After that, when we are now in the recovery room, that's when we can now begin to talk about people who go for what they call physiotherapy.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
come
You
and
go
talk
for
nicely
rehab
to
and
you.
so on.
Exactly. People talk nicely to you, and then there's TV in your ward. But when you're in emergency ward, it's not the same thing. So when we are an emergency, that's where I find Nigeria, and I find Nigerian youth, and I find the brand of leadership that P2B is presenting. P2B is present, and when you always say politics, P2B is presenting something that would work in a Nigeria that is already sanitized, where you play politics a certain way, where it is politicians that will come and play politics. But where we are right now, it is not the typical politician like Obasanjo and Babangida and all of these people that will solve the problem. And that's what the
I
young people
agree.
need to be told.
I agree.
So
And
I'm looking forward to honestly, I'm looking forward to a new school of thought. It's not even the third force that will rule, but the talking point, this group that will not just warn the young people, because it's one thing to tell the young person, don't go inside that car and move it without a brake, it will crash. And for you to say, no, don't go there, and hold them down to the point where they call the police and they say, you infringed on my right. Yes, I'd rather have the police come and we argue it out, and all of that happens. But I stop them from entering that car to have the accident. Rather than me saying, I hope when you enter that vehicle,
that you know that it has no brakes and so
I know
on.
you have no brake, that you will throw stone or log in it. But honestly, I get what you're saying, and I'm glad we had this this line of thought. It's something I would like to hear more about it, because I really feel for the youth. I know that energy there. I know I've been close to that energy. I've worked with that energy, and you clearly defined it when you say that most of the achievements, and that's what happened with so many countries, by the way. Most of what is driving Nigeria's
Nigeria.
success and achievement is the youth.
Goes to the youth. Yeah.
Is the youth.
And they are the most betrayed. They're the most
Exactly.
betrayed
Exactly.
by decades of ruinous, tragic policies.
So I don't want another 4 years.
Which is why they should be clear-eyed.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, you and I agree fundamentally on what needs to be done. But most of the youth are not pausing to consider that idea that their country is already irredeemably wrecked and needs sort of a basic building blocks put in place in an emergency way before we can talk about even the fact that if you look at the political parties, the major political parties and how they came up with their candidates, the amount of figures we were hearing distributed to party delegates to secure the tickets in a country that is now effectively bankrupt. The fact that people are not as incensed as they should be basically shocks the heck out of me. So things are really, really bad. And ideally, we should pause and say, how do we create a semblance of order upon which we can then build a society that has any form of logic and any prospect for regeneration and growth. So I think that this is, I don't know Um, I think that it's been a bracing, really exciting conversation for me. So I don't know if uh, if this wasn't a good place to stop.
No, 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 no. That's what I was coming to. I was coming to
Mhm,
that. I was coming to say that it's been very exciting, very, very exciting,
mhm,
and I wanted an opportunity to hear from close quarters the Okey Ndibe that we see online and we hear in the news, and you did much more than what I expected, and for that I'm very, very grateful to you. I want to thank you for being the person you are, standing on principles that you've stood. These are things that will always inspire people like me in a country and in a generation where the horizon is being it continues to diminish, that we look for people to look up to, people who will stand on principles and insist that this is what I believe in, this is what it should be, and I'm not going to compromise.
mhm.
Yes, it's going to bring some discomfort to me, but I'm willing to go through that. That's why someone said, oh, this person should be working with a loyalist show, right? Because they heard some of the things you say that they've been hearing show talk about. But it's just honestly, there will be another day for us to talk.
Yeah,
Let me
absolutely. I
let me
mean, it's a long process. I'm willing
yeah,
to
yeah,
return and continue this conversation. I really seriously believe uh, in the prospect of good forces within the country, and there are good elements all over the country
sure,
who can work in concert to rescue this space that we call Nigeria, which is a
yeah,
very depressing state, very in a very appalling condition today, but with prospect and the energy of the youth. I always bank on it, and I think that
sure.
young people are capable of just self renewal and transformation and so on. So
Thank you
thank you
so
very
much.
much. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Chidi,
you.
for
Thank you for
the
coming. Okay.
kindness of your invitation, and I've had fun, and I look forward to doing it again some other time.
Okay,
And
my
regards, by the
regards.
way, to your wife. I believe she did her youth service in Yola, didn't she?
Yes, yes. No, she did her youth service in Europe. She was the one that was saying, "Oh, okay, we will have to talk to him. We'll have to talk
Yes,
to
yes,
him."
yes,
But
yes.
I'm glad I found. I've been trying to make this happen for a very long
I
time, and I'm
know, I
glad
know.
finally I was able to track you down and we had
Yes.
this interview. My regards to your lovely wife,
Okay, my
and
brother. Okay, my brother. And stay warm in that your Canadian space. I'm actually, where are you in Canada?
I'm in Toronto. I'm in Toronto.
Okay, because I'm teaching in upstate New York in St. Lawrence, which is an hour and a half from
Yes,
Ottawa. So, and
yes,
I've
yes,
come to Toronto quite. That's the part of Canada that I've visited most often. A
yes,
bunch of
yes.
Nigerian groups and
Yeah,
universities
they
have
invite
invited
you. I
me
know when they
to
invited you.
to
Yes,
to give
yes.
talks in Toronto. So hopefully that will happen again.
Yeah,
All
once
right.
we see honestly, the state of Nigeria, people don't understand how that has affected everything that is being done all over.
Mm-hmm.
It makes us here, we don't even know.
Yeah.
Like there's this suspicion of everybody suspecting everybody, and things are no longer organized the way they used to.
It's a shame.
Yeah, it's a very big shame.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for
Please
coming. My
give my
regards to your
regards to your
family.
wife and the family.
Yes.
Okay.
And
All
when
right
next
then.
we call you, please don't consider that we overshot the time.
Oh no,
Please
no, no,
please
no,
come
no.
back.
I am actually, I like to give Nigeria and give these conversations as much time as possible.
Thank you.
So yeah, we can do some other time and do even more time than we've been able to
Thank
get in
thank you
today.
very, very
All
much.
right. Okay,
Thank
my
you. Okay.
brother. Have a brilliant weekend.
You too.
Okay
Thank
then.
you very
Bye
much.
bye
Yeah, bye
now.
bye.
Bye bye, those of you watching.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
All right. That was Okey Ndibe. Professor Okey Ndibe. He doesn't like to be called professor. He doesn't like to be called anything but Okey Ndibe. Um, very well read man, very articulate, an author of so many books. a writer, a contributor to so many publications, and a human rights activist also. So many other things that he is, but he just likes to keep it simple. Um, but I'm glad we had this interview with him. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for accommodating all the glitches we had at the beginning. We're going to cut it off so you have a clean video. But when next we have another guest on our show, please make sure that you tune in and we'll continue this conversation. And on behalf of Dr. Erica and every member of our crew, my name is Dr. Chidi, and I'll see you in our next broadcast. Bye bye.